This is the key question. Ed Miliband is a hero on the soft left. There is no one better to fulfill Andy Burnham's agenda of devolution and soft left economics, but he is deeply charismatic, he's deeply competent, and some in Burnham's team fear he is too powerful if given the top job. He was also, Bloomberg exclusively reported a few weeks ago, the first person to tell Keir Starmer that he had to go. Shabana Mahmood is steeped in the right of the party. She is the kind of person who crushed the Corbynite left a few years ago.
Right.
She is leading the hardest immigration reforms that many in her own party hate. But so she is the one the rumour mill currently tip to be Chancellor. But nothing is decided, and I don't believe you heard anything there.
What's fascinating to me, James, and I talked to the late Lord Desai, Megdon Desai, about this years ago. He lectured me on Leeds was different than London. Madam Mahmood, out of, I believe, Oxford Law, she is, I believe, first-generation Pakistani immigrant, and yet she's riding herd on the immigration debate.
I believe she's second generation, but look, it's not about that, it's about the rhetoric. And what she said, she gave a forceful speech in Parliament a year ago, where she said the problem with losing control of migration is it means people with backgrounds like hers are seen as not welcome in this country and are seen as not British. And she made the case to her own party that they needed to get control of migration, no matter what it took, no matter how hard or brutal it looked, because otherwise they could not be pro-diversity. And for some people, especially those on the right of politics, her words made her out to be one of the most formidable politicians Labour has to offer. For others on the left, they saw it as a heresy. And so that is the poison chalice that Mahmood holds. But also, if Burnham were to pick her, shows that he is trying to opt for a party that brings more together. And that does speak to the unity you just heard from him on the steps of number 10 just there. But the real good thing is, Tom, he's walking in, and I can't tell you which one it is. And that's the really astonishing thing.
All right, right now we also want to bring in Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchor Caroline Hepker. Caroline, thanks so much for joining us here. What are the expectations within London about what Mr. Burnham can effectively get done in the next 6 months, 12 months going forward?
I think the first 100 days are going to be very closely watched. I can't say that the expectations are as high as they were when Keir Starmer came into government, certainly not from business. I mean, you've heard the likes of the leader of the CBI, the biggest business lobby in the UK, really worried about a summer of speculation ahead of the budget about what is going to happen with taxes. I think businesses are really deeply worried because of the negative tone that Keir Starmer took and then the tax hikes that cost a lot to business then. In terms of what we know about the policy, the background is growth is stagnating, inflation is there, things are going to get probably tougher towards the second half of this year. The energy prices in the UK that we have seen soar because of external factors. So Andy Burnham has got to deal with all of that. Is he going to be really bold in terms of bringing in reform? He's talked already about maybe floating this idea of a tax cut for millions of workers. If you look at the freeze on the personal tax allowance for income tax, he's talked about fossil fuel drilling. He talked about a number 10 in the north of England and scrapping government issued digital IDs maybe. So these are ideas that are floating around. But, as you heard, very, very brief speech there from Andy Burnham. No notes. That was a big deal. It was in front of not a lectern, just some microphones. So it's certainly a new style of leadership. But yes, the pressure has just mounted. He's really got to deliver.
James, what are the expectations as it relates to Mr. Burnham's ability to work with Parliament here? What is his standing there?
Well, this is a difficult one to answer because on paper, Andy Burnham has a 166-seat majority. That is supposed to be godlike power in the UK Parliament. He should be able to reshape Britain as he sees fit with that kind of majority. However, Keir Starmer had that kind of majority, and you saw what happened to Keir Starmer roughly 60 minutes ago. He left. So the question is, what will those MPs vote for. A key test of this is going to be welfare. It was the first big rebellion under Starmer, and in many ways it spelled the sort of end of him. We will see if Burnham has another crack at it. The fiscal statement, as Caroline just set out for the UK, means he may have no choice, but certainly a lot of his aides have talked about it.
Caroline, I look at this, and for Americans, let's keep it easy. The Labor are like our Democrats. I understand that Mahmoud as a potential chancellor is much more like Blair and Brown, sort of centrist Democrats in America. Where does a prime minister fit into the matrix from Corbyn all the way over to Tony Blair?
Well, that's the test. We don't exactly know. We know his history in the sense that he was an MP and a minister who tried to get social care reform done previously, and that he's been a mayor in Greater Manchester, where actually James and I have both been and interviewed him in the past. He worked very closely with business. That is one of the things that he says he's going to bring to this new leadership in London. But we actually don't know how he's going to map success with things like buses and local transport in Manchester and building out the city centre in Manchester. How is he going to translate that onto a national level? And there are contradictions. I mean, I thought it was interesting in that speech that he talked about being a new generation. Of course, you know, if you compare, Sir Keir Starmer is 63, Andy Burnham is 56. It's not a huge gap. But there are contradictions at the heart of this, because he's talking about reindustrializing Britain. He harks back, though, to the 1980s, a long time ago, and Margaret Thatcher, and doing things differently. So there's quite a tension, I think, there. And really, we do not yet know what policies he's going to be espousing, and also what he's going to be able to deliver.
James, when he gets up and stands in Parliament, I had the joy of, with Gonzalo Vina years ago, observing this in firsthand, the violence of Prime Minister's questions in the Parliament. When Prime Minister Burnham stands there, who will speak against him in his first PMQs?
It will be Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, and it's going to be an interesting challenge for her, because Andy Burnham is widely acknowledged to be a more charismatic and more funny Prime Minister than Keir Starmer was. Just when he was taking his oath as an MP, someone heckled him, saying that he wasn't the Messiah, and he responded saying, "Naughty boy," which is a famous line from a Monty Python film. Now, the question, though, is what legislation is he going to be defending in Parliament, Tom? Look, we know who his heroes are. He said last Friday that he harks back to Neil Kinnock, big soft left Labour leaders, Dame Margaret Beckett, David Blunt. In Labour circles, you may not recognise those names in the US, but I recognise them. They are big soft left heroes. What does that look like in legislation? We have not seen any of that yet, and that is what we're going to be watching. The picks of the cabinet are going to be the first indication of what that might look like.